Hello, everyone, and welcome to War of the Stars, a Star Wars podcast. Come to you, as always, from deep within the Outer Rim, far beyond the watchful eyes of the Galactic Empire. My name is John Mark Tolley. Joining me today, as always, are my co-hosts,
Garrett K. Jones.
And Brian
and
Karasik.
welcome, you guys. Welcome. And Garrett, why don't you tell the folks out there what we are going to be talking about this week?
We're going to be talking about something that is very near and dear to my heart, and that is the necessary eradication of the Ewok. I'm sorry. I'm switching gears. I'm jumping ahead a few months.
It's next week.
No, today we're going to be talking about the lore of the comics as it exists, because while the newer comics being published by Marvel Comics under their imprint have been doing very well, there was a day and age where the comics were actually being produced by Dark Horse from like the late 80s, early 90s, all the way up until about 2012, something like that. So as you guys can see behind me, and I've mentioned this before, I've got a whole row on my shelf of graphic novels that span the galaxy, that are just dedicated to Star Wars. Some of my favorites are on there. Some of them are series that I just could not put down because they were that good. But we'll talk about everything in between.
We will. Now, I'm going to have to rely on you guys a little bit this week to do a lot of the heavy lifting. I'll be honest, I haven't really read a ton of the Star Wars comics. I just haven't. I've read.
I'm going to grab a couple of samples here. Hold on.
All right.
I've got 3 long boxes of comics. I've done some heavy lifting already. I'm here for you, John.
Well, thank you, guys. Now,
I believe Marvel actually carried the imprimatur of Star Wars comics in the early to mid 80s before Dark Horse took it over. Isn't that right, Garrett?
Yes, actually they did. Especially back in the 70s and 80s, Marvel had tie-ins with Star Wars early on.
And there was that Darth Vader on Gilligan's Island issue.
I don't remember that one.
I just made that up. It's plausible.
But for the time period of comics, yes, it was absolutely possible.
Oh, yeah.
Right. The Harlem Globetrotters, why not? I would like to just
on the
just
Death
right
Star.
out the gate. I was a fan of Jaxon, the Lepi pilot, the Green Bunny.
Yes, I do remember
Yep.
him. Yeah.
The inspiration for Nintendo's Bucky O'Hara, some might say.
Yeah.
And for all of you people out there who were so surprised about Palpatine returning, let's not forget that he actually did that already, basically the same way in
Dark
a
Empire.
graphic novel. And what was it? In Dark Empire. Yes.
Yeah, some of us had problems with the plot line of that, in that it was essentially Luke deciding to do the exact same thing that Vader had already failed to do, but we can get that into that at a later date.
Yeah.
I do have a Palpatine figure with the blue lightsaber from that series, the only blue lightsaber on my shelf.
And did he steal that blue lightsaber, or was that just a kerfuffle in the toy manufacturing?
No, he made it's canon. He used a blue lightsaber while he was training with Luke as young, handsome Palpatine with a big funny collar. Looked like him from the Powerpuff Girls.
Nice.
Not my favorite Palpatine incarnation, but if it's got Palpatine on the box, I'm buying it. I just got my 6th Funko. Sorry, 7th.
That makes sense. So the lore tends to change hands. I do like the Marvel books that have been coming out, especially with the general Star Wars imprint, where it just kind of picks up from the end of A New Hope and just keeps moving forward. But I've also found that I'm really going back. I really enjoy the books put out by Dark Horse, just simply because the art was really good. and a lot of it was done the traditional hand drawn 2D art. You didn't have the graphic art that was being done digitally, on a digital sketch pad or something like that, like it is now. Everything was done ink and paper, and there's kind of a grittiness to it, because I pulled out 5 samples here. Clone Wars Volume 1, The Force Unleashed tie-in to the video game, Star Wars Legacy, Shadows of the Empire, which I will constantly bring back up in this podcast. And then
Rightly
one
so.
of my favorites is Star Wars Visionaries, which actually gave us the final duel with Obi-Wan and Maul before it was ever put into Rebels.
Mm.
In fact, that episode is almost shot for shot from the graphic novel here, and the only difference is who's watching it. In the in the episode, who was watching, Brian?
Just us, I think.
Ezra Bridger was there.
No, Ezra
Oh,
left.
of course.
Or it was shortly out. Yeah, Ezra was nearby.
They sent him because he was sent away, and then it was just Vader and Obi-Wan, or not Vader and Obi-Wan, but Maul and Obi-Wan.
Yeah, and so what this book does, in fact, Old Wounds is exactly the first story that you get in Visionaries, and it starts with Owen teaching, at this point, probably a 3 or 4 year old Luke how to talk, and like they're showing him everything about the farm and taking him out there, and the next thing you see is Maul with those monstrous cybernetic legs come rushing towards them, and he uses them as bait to draw Obi-Wan out.
Mm.
And Obi-Wan he's very much in starting to look somewhere between the Ewan McGregor version and the Alec Guinness version.
Ewan McGinnis.
Yeah, Ewan McGinnis or Alec
McGregor.
Alec McGregor. But it's really cool. Like, it explained, like, in this, there's a nice little nod in the action where Maul kicks Obi-Wan into the speeder that Luke eventually has as the family car, and you see why the panel is missing off of one of the engines. You see why there's a dent in the front hood of the vehicle, and it's this really, really great story. And the thing I love about it, as it ends, is the fight did not go down as it does in
Rebels.
What at the very end of it, you have Maul's lightsaber gets cut in half, and his arm gets completely removed. His left arm gets removed just below the shoulder, and he's at Obi-Wan's mercy. Obi-Wan has the emitter of his lightsaber pointed right at Maul's forehead. Maul's horns have all grown out. They look like a crown more than ever. And there's a moment where Obi-Wan's he remembers all the pain, all the sorrow of Qui-Gon's death and everything that happened throughout the Clone Wars, and Anakin turning to the dark side and Padme dying. And then he looks over and he has this momentary hesitation, and Maul's like, "Oh man, I'm dead. I'm dead." And the next thing you see is a blaster bolt hit Maul right square in the side of the head, right in the temple, and it's Owen who pulled the trigger, saving Obi-Wan from having to make that decision.
The Dumbledore gambit.
Huh?
The Dumbledore gambit. Obi-Wan didn't have to be a murderer. That's a classic Disney death. The hero doesn't actually have to ever kill the villain.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is, it ends with this really great exchange between Owen and Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan asks, "Is he okay?" referring to Luke. And Owen says, "I told you I'd keep him safe, and I will, even if that means from you. You don't come back here, understand?" And Obi-Wan walks away. Luke is being carried by Beru back to the house, and he's looking over Beru's shoulder at Obi-Wan. And Obi-Wan uses the Force to communicate and says, "Don't worry, I'll be right here, even if you can't see me, always."
The relationship between Owen and Kenobi is explored in the current canon of comics as well. It's a fascinating interplay.
Yeah.
They both love that boy. They both want to take care of him, but they both have very different ideas of what that entails.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. There is a story in here that, Brian, I think you would totally get a kick out of. It is called Sithis, and it picks up with Palpatine sitting in this meditation chamber, opening up. He's using some kind of crystal, and he's got a bunch of Sith holocrons active and ready, and he's doing all sorts of crazy Sith alchemy, and he is purging himself of all light, all weakness. And one of the things that he does is he starts channeling his power towards influencing what is happening in the Clone Wars and what's happening with Padme, and and he's building everything towards the future that he is hoping to. And it's really dark and twisted, and it has this really cool H.P. Lovecraft style horror that takes place throughout.
Now, did you read the Star Wars Tales series, Garrett?
I have not, no.
Oh, that led to the Infinities. There's some great stories in there. First off, we see Skippy, the Jedi droid. Yeah, these are dubiously canonical, but folks, for those not familiar with Skippy, this story posits in Star Wars Tales Episode 1, which I think was 93. It was Tales Episode 1, 99. Sorry, 99. The R5 unit whose motivator blows, causing Owen to buy R2 instead of the R5 unit. The R5 unit saw a vision of the Force that R2 had to be the one to go with Owen to get the recording of Leia to Luke, and so the R5 essentially blew his own motivator. It's a nice little touch there. It's a real short. I think it's like 8 pages long in the story. But I think what most people would focus on in the Star Wars Tales series, the one that most people are familiar with, is in Episode 10, we have a duel between Maul and Vader, wherein Maul is resurrected through unclear means by Sith cultists who believe that Vader is unfit to serve, in that he began as a Jedi. Maul was never a Jedi. So the sentiment is Maul is a better apprentice to Darth Sidious than Vader because Maul is pure. And so there's an epic battle in a cavern between the two. And spoiler alert for a 1999 era comic book, Vader defeats Maul by igniting his own lightsaber through his torso, and the lightsaber stabs Maul in the back, or stabs Maul through his back. At which point the dialogue gets a little bit campy. I won't go into it, but it's a great story. I really enjoyed it.
Is that the one where I think I've read that one? That's the one where Maul asks, "What can you hate that much?" And Vader says, "Myself."
Yep, that's what I didn't want to say.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's Vader. He's got some great campy lines. I don't care. I mean, one of my favorite lines in the comics is, when the rebels say you're surrounded, and Vader says the only thing I'm surrounded by is fear and dead men.
I made a meme that has gotten some traction out there where it's a shot from Episode 4 right after Vader has killed Kenobi, and the caption is, "All I'm surrounded by is fear and dead Ben."
That's a great line.
So Star Wars Tales, though, that fed into the Infinities series, which was a short-lived but very potent series of stories of what if this or that. What if Luke had died on Hoth? What if Leia was the one who was captured? It's great stories. I won't go too far into it because they're pretty intricate and they're better told than my recap would be. But there again, we do come across White Darth Vader, who has recently been featured in the Dark Millennium the Dark Falcon Lego set out of Rebuilding the Galaxy. So if you're interested in looking at alternate histories, you can see Darth Jar Jar and Jedi Master Vader.
Now, one I found very interesting is it was from, I'm looking it up now because I remember what the story is about. I just had to remember which one it was. It was Star Wars Vader Dark Visions issue 3. And in this one, Vader has a stalker. It is a nurse
Yes.
Who becomes like overly obsessed with Vader to the point of even trying to manipulate things to just so she can get close to him. And like the ending is just because it ends the way you think it would end, with this, where she's basically saying, I love you for how you are in everything you, and then the final scene is her dead body lying in Vader's chamber.
Nobody's
and
allowed to love Vader.
The stormtroopers to basically take out the trash.
I'm enjoying the Vader comic series I'm reading now, where we see Vader interacting with the handmaidens of Padme Amidala.
Yes, there's one and she recognizes him.
Sabe,
and she refers to him as Anakin. She's like the only person who knows that Vader and Anakin are one and the same.
Which doesn't work out the way she thinks it will. No,
but there's a span of time where they fight side by side together because they're protecting each other. Like I was reading parts of that comic online. It was really well done. The art was amazing.
Mm-hmm. I really like the emotional interplay of how it must feel for Vader to be spending so much time with a warrior who looks enough like Padme that she was often used as a double for her.
Yeah,
how to mess with your head, You're in love with this one woman and then accidentally mostly kill her, and then a decade or so later, here you are working alongside her bodyguard who looks just like her, and just speaks truth to power to Vader quite a bit. It's a great story.
I've read a lot of the Vader comics. I do love how they do Vader in the comics. I mean, the first, there's the episode, the issue with the first real interaction between Vader and Luke, where Luke is basically trying to fight Vader, and he, I think he says the line of, you killed my father, and Vader has the great line of, I've killed many fathers. You'll have to be more specific.
Yeah.
I feel like somebody had watched the Street Fighter movie at that point pretty recently when they were writing that dialogue. You familiar with the scene?
For me, it was just a Tuesday.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh,
and
God bless
you got the great scene in the Star Destroyer bridge when Boba Fett gives Vader the info of the name of the kid who destroyed the Death Star, and you just see the whole, that one panel.
That is an amazing. It's hard to use the word cinematography with comic books, but it's perfect. There's one page where you see a panel of Vader looking out the window, cut to Padme saying she's pregnant, cut to looking out the window, cut to Palpatine saying she's dead. Turn the page, and Vader's anger is cracking the transparent steel window of his Star Destroyer. It's amazing. It's a great scene. That's what sold me. I literally traded in 4 long boxes worth of 30 years worth of comic books.
When you described that scene, it was reminding me not to jump to another comic series, but it was very similar to that, of like one panel showing all these different panels showing different things that are happening simultaneously. If you've ever read the Marvel graphic novel, God Loves, Man Kills, there's a scene that's similar to that where they have 3 different things that are happening, 4 or 5 different things that are happening all simultaneously of one event. And that kind of reminded me of that.
It's a great mechanism using comic books. I mean, I was reading Secret Wars in 1983, so they did a lot of that back then too.
Yeah,
great series. Now, Garrett, I was going to ask: do we want to mostly focus on the 80s, the pre-Disney era, because those are great comics? But
we can switch gears. Yeah. I mean, I've got several of the Marvel volumes. I can't remember which shelf they're on. I think they're on towards the bottom shelf, but. That's how I got introduced to Dr. Aphra. I know that she's one of the Star Wars femme fatales that you've got an absolute crush on, and I can't say I blame you. There's something
I wouldn't say crush. I mean, I'm not her speed. I'm not her demographic, but
you have a pulse.
But I will say that the Dr. Aphra comic has introduced some of the best storylines, I think, in the post-Disney era. And also some of the best characters. And I don't think anyone would disagree Black Kirsten is an essential aspect of the Book of Boba Fett. But more to the point, I would like to talk about BT1 and 000, the droids that Aphra employs. Folks, these are two droids who, this is borrowed directly from the EU Tarkin Initiative, wherein BT1 is what we call a blastomech, which is an assassin droid built into an astromech chassis. And canonically, he was created, and as soon as he was activated, he just killed everyone in the base where he was located, destroyed the base, and then shut himself down and floated in deep space for a period of time until there was something else to kill. That's just what he's there for. And so when Aphra hatches him out, when she warms him back up, she's had to locate this other droid named 000, a protocol droid with a torturer personality chip. So it's basically Black Chrome 3PO. Leia meets him and calls him Creepio, which I just love. But the three of them, you've got, and I like it's a subtle nod, but one thing I've always found entertaining about astromechs is they seem to have a magical capacity to have any tool necessary. You know, whether it's R2 can plug into anything with that one probe, or, you know, BB-8's got like 9 different arms coming out and on his when he's trying to fix Poe's ship in mid-battle. But astromechs have just to me, comical ability to produce the correct tool. Yeah. And BT1, they do the same thing except with weapons. There's a scene in the Aphra comic where BT1 is allowed to kind of go nuts, and he opens up like that scene from The Mask. It's just like all guns, and he's got his own, like, he makes his own ammunition in there somehow, and it's just it's great to hear the interplay of a protocol droid who's also a torturer gently chiding BT1 for not leaving anyone left alive to pull their nervous system out. It's a nice touch. I really enjoy that. And 000, even at one point, and I think this is brilliant, he capitalizes on his resemblance to 3PO in that he approaches, in a dust storm, he approaches Luke and pretends to be 3PO. So he's clearly got the same voice. And it works for a time.
I would love to see Anthony Daniels play 000.
Oh.
Dude, like I mean, he's already got a pretty decent acting range from what he does as a voice actor, plus what he did with his mime work in, you know, as 3PO. But like to have him play the same voice but a different character, I think would be really fun.
Yeah, that would be interesting. A good friend of mine his daughter does an amazing 000 cosplay, which began when they were making a 3PO costume. They mistimed the cook and came out with this shiny black 3PO face, and he's like, "That's it." And so they made the rest of the body like that. And if you Google 000 cosplay, you'll see her. She's one of the best, and really one of the best droid cosplays I've seen, and the only 000 I've seen. It's a great series. If you have a subscription to Marvel, what is it, Marvel Unlimited, where you can read the comic books online on the app or whatever, do not miss the Vader comics run. Aphra is introduced in that series. And speaking of what you said earlier, John Mark, the Vader series, the Charles Soule era when they first launched, covers the time immediately between the films. So it fills in the blanks between episodes 4, 5, and 6.
I think between the Vader series and the general Star Wars line that Marvel's been putting out,
the core series,
it does a great job of filling in the gaps between films. And I think it does it in a way that feels very organic to the storytelling.
So I think we have to talk one thing about one of my favorite lines of comics. They are absolutely hilarious. Of course, I'm talking about Tag and Bank. I loved that comic series. For those of you who don't know, these were 2 stormtroopers who happened to find themselves somehow in every major situation in Star Wars history, and usually they were the catalyst of something happening that would cause. They were the gunners in the Star Destroyer that didn't shoot down the pod.
The pod.
They
were the guardsmen who didn't defend Palpatine from Vader.
That is one of my favorite. When they're behind the
They are, for the theater majors out there, Tag and Bink are Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are rebel agents, basically.
Yeah. But
that is a fun series. I was introduced to that late and really enjoyed it. I was able to pick up every comic in a row and read them all.
Yeah, it's just
they've done some really good one-shots too. There was a great one-shot where we see Cassian Andor reprogramming K2SO, which I always thought was an interesting dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've touched on that in the show before, but I'd like to see the movie version of Cassian and K2SO told from another point of view, in that we see an Imperial agent who has kidnapped a rebel intelligence officer and brainwashed them to be an Imperial, and the efforts made to rescue it, because that's what happened. Okay, do you think K2SO begged Cassian not to do it? Because I think we've talked about this before, but droids are sentient beings that are programmed to be subservient, created to be subservient. So K2SO is a prisoner of war who's been brainwashed to like it, and I think if we saw that from the other angle, it would be the kidnapper would be a true villain.
Mm.
Well, you know, I if you look at it from the way that K2SO responds a lot of the times, while he is loyal to Cassian, like his responses, the dry cynicism, there is something else beyond that. There's a resentment.
Mm.
You can hear it.
He enjoys hitting him a little too much, don't you think?
Right. I mean, like the dryness of his responses belies a resentment to the fact that he was reprogrammed and repurposed to serve a government that he does not believe in.
Mm.
I think you're right, Garrett. I hadn't really thought of it that way. I was just crediting Alan Tudyk with doing a genius job, as he always does.
Oh
yeah. I mean, and I think you're right there. He's a great actor. Probably one of the best of his generation. But the word choices, the way it's delivered, the action behind some of the things that K2 does there is a boiling or seething resentment there.
Yeah. Now
he's a little snide. I think it shows.
I think it'd be interesting if dreaming, get a chance to talk to him to know if that was something that the directors purposely told him to do it like that, or if he read the script and was like, okay, I'm going to, if that was an actor choice or a director choice.
Don't let me near Alan Tudyk. You can't put him on a show with me. I'll have to sit that one out. I'll just want to talk to him about 28 Days Later in Dodgeball. Oh, were you in Star Wars too?
You mean 28 Days? 28 Days.
Oh, right. Different franchise.
28 Days Later,
where
Jeremy Renner fights,
right, zombies.
That's 28 weeks later. I'm thinking Cillian Murphy is the one in 28 Days.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yes, 28 Days with Sandra Bullock, not 28 Days Later with zombies. My bad.
I don't know.
Although I'm gonna, there's the pitch right there. That's the crossover I want to see now.
What about the talk a little bit about, because I know we're getting close on time, but real quick, the What If comics. I know there was a series that came out. I thought those were interesting. I mean, yes, we got the awful white Darth Vader outfit out of that.
It wasn't awful. It just was very. It wasn't as
unusual.
It was contrived. He went and found a bucket of white paint. Give me a break.
Yeah, he just basically looked like a stormtrooper with a cooler helmet.
And it conjured images of him changing the color of his lightsaber like you do with an ultra saber. You know, it's just keep the black armor. It's fine.
My favorite of that series was the redo of A New Hope, where Leia ends up being basically brainwashed into being part of the Empire because they manage to only damage the Death Star and not destroy it.
Right.
And so
I often teach my daughter as we're watching her children's media, you got to watch out for folks with a British accent who want order.
Yeah,
right? It's always the bad guys, the General Huxes, the Dolores Umbridges. British people who want order are never the good guy and will always tell you that they are.
This is true.
I'm looking at you, King George III. But anyway, that storyline covers that because Vader and Palpatine collectively work on Leia to look, this is the universe, the galaxy is in chaos, and someone's got to take a strong hand to it. it may as well be us. Or, when you present the option of me or the deluge, that's how people end up as emperor.
Yeah. And of course it has
There's my French lit majors out there, right?
Yeah. And of course it has Yoda committing mass murder.
By dropping a space station on a planet. Good job.
Yeah. Just,
I think that's an homage to how they killed Chewie in the EU.
Yeah.
No, they killed him. He got smashed between two moons that were colliding.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
As in, that's no moon. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. I'm the guy who thinks Ezra Bridger is a reference to Luke Skywalker, because if you build a bridge, you can walk in the sky. Sorry, we'll come back to that.
Oh, no.
Don't. That is genius. I make an excellent point. All right. Fair enough. This is the audience. I should be able to convince that. So if I'm not, if it's not working, it's not working.
I'm trying to avoid any possibility that my best friend, whose only sense of humor is telling puns, might ever hear something like that and use it, because he will.
He doesn't listen to the show, I guess. That's a shame.
So far. I mean, if we talk exclusively about the other Star franchise,
he
Trek of the Stars. That's a different podcast. Well, there's also Gate of the Stars, Battle of the Stars. We could go on. I'm into all the Star fandom. Search of the Stars. I mean, we can even go Black Star if you want to talk 80s comic books, but fair enough.
Yeah.
So aside from Aphra and her supporting cast, namely Kirsten Tan, 000, and BT1, the Vader comics, as we talked about, they really have some amazing Vader writing. I got to bow to the Charles Soule era. I got to meet him briefly and interview him on a previous media endeavor. And he's such a cool guy and just really, really likable, and completely recontextualized that comic. And what I love about the Vader comic is coming off of the prequels, Vader was no longer a terrifying monster to be feared. Vader was a callow youth, misled by a wit far defter than his own. And seeing Vader in the comics kind of takes you back to, oh yeah, he is a villain. Like there might be a tortured soul inside that armor, but that doesn't mean he's not still a mass murderer, the butcher of the Hyades. He's the bad guy. And I really love how the comic books have not only returned him to that state of villainy, but also given us some contextualization for why.
Yeah.
Because Anakin does nothing halfway. He can't just be a Jedi. He's the most powerful Jedi. He can't just be in love. He's got to be the most in love.
Yeah.
And so as a result, he's like, well, the people make jokes that he kind of just went evil, like, lol for the evils. But, if it's all you have left, if you have only one thing you can do it well. And Anakin Skywalker's version of doing it well is doing it on a galactic scale.
I've often said this before, that my favorite version of Vader is the one where he is almost like the galaxy's ultimate boogeyman. Like his voice, like the mere mention of his name can spread fear. Like he's the one that when kids around the galaxy are acting up, he's like you better be careful or Vader will come and get you. Like that ultimate of like, and I think we see that, like you said, in the new Vader comics, we saw that in Obi-Wan. I think that was the Vader we saw in Obi-Wan.
There is a scene in one of the novels where Vader butchers everybody on board a starship. And he does so after he turns on comms, so everyone in the starship can hear it happening. And it's just a nice moment, like, let me just make sure. And it harkens back to in the Darth Bane trilogy by Drew Karpyshyn. I can't pronounce it. No one can. Anyway, the Bane trilogy, it speaks a lot that Darth Bane does things to horrify his victims that he doesn't have to do, but he draws more power from it. Through the dark side, he grows more powerful from the fear and suffering of his victims. It's not just a murder. It's the murder of a horrified, terrified animal.
Yeah.
At its last in extremis. And Vader does that too. The scene in Rogue One where there's a dark hallway and then he he's turned off his life support for that. right? Like when you see his life support lights come on in the dark, he turned off his box just for that moment.
We'll get into this next week. Spoilers, where we could talking about Vader. But yes, Vader is all about theatrics.
Yes, he is.
He is.
And there's something I'll bring up about that next week because I'm currently listening to a Star Wars audiobook that takes place pre-Clone Wars, but Anakin is about 12 years old and he's involved in a pod racing mission for the Jedi Order.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I guess that gets us to our point where we're going to be wrapping up, I believe.
We are. Brian, why don't you start us out by telling us, everyone out there, where they can find
Sure. I am one of the archivists of the Sith Library and Archives on Facebook. It's a Sith-based fan page where we have a lovingly curated collection of Sith architecture, art, humor, discussions of philosophy. Come join us out there, won't you?
All right. And Garrett, what about yourself?
Well, you guys can find me on Instagram and X at GKJ_publishing, where I talk about my show, The Right Way, on YouTube. We are getting ready to launch season 7. And on that show, we talk about books, author interviews, and we do writing tips.
Awesome. Of course, for us right here, if you want to get a hold of us, you can do so very easily by our email. That is warthestars1@gmail.com. You can check us out on Instagram at war_of_the_stars1. We are also on X at warthestars1. And you can check us out on YouTube at WOTS77. Also, if you want to support the show, you can do so by going to our Ko-fi.com/warthestars, or check us out on our Spreadshirt shop to catch all the cool, I'm not wearing it right now, but all the cool War of the Stars merch. We are, of course, now officially part of Feast of Fandoms. More information will be coming out soon about that. And with that being said, as always, remember, this is not just my Star Wars. This is not just your Star Wars. This is our Star Wars. Until next time, may the Force be with you.